The truly tragic deaths of 7 workers from World Central Kitchen is raising serious new questions about Israel's war strategy and U.S. support. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged there was a tragic, but he says unintentional incident hitting innocent people in Gaza. But WCK says its workers were targeted by the IDF, despite having coordinated their movements and clearly marking their convoy with logos. You can see here the impact for yourself. This WCK vehicle destroyed by what appears to be a direct strike. Among the victims, a dual American-Canadian citizen, and Zomi Francom, who I interviewed after the Morocco earthquake, and she spoke with deep conviction about the organization's mission.
World Central Kitchen are laser focused at reaching communities at the margins. We're laser focused on overcoming every obstacle, every challenge to be able to serve hope and dignity in the form of fresh meals and fresh drinking water.
Zomi is now gone, and World Central Kitchen is now pausing operations in Gaza. To be clear, the work WCK was doing there was, nearly 6 months into this war, no less than trying to keep civilians, including children, from starving to death. NBC's Josh Lederman is following this story for us. Also with us, Ben Rhodes, former Deputy National Security Advisor and MSNBC political contributor. Ben, we heard from Secretary Blinken today, repeating what we've heard many times from the Biden administration, that Israel needs to do more to protect civilians. Now this tragedy. Will the deaths of 7 humanitarian workers change anything, Ben? How does the White House respond to this?
Look, Chris, this is really tragic and not normal. I think we have to say that. And, I heard Prime Minister Netanyahu in his statement said these things happen in war. No, they don't. This was a marked convoy of humanitarian workers who'd gone through deconfliction procedures. I frankly can't think of anything like this happening since the Russian and Syrian regime were targeting aid workers in Syria, in Aleppo. So we don't know exactly what happened here, and there's going to have to be an investigation. So I'm not suggesting we know the intent yet, but clearly something is wrong with the military strategy that Israel's pursuing if something like this can happen even when these convoys are marked as humanitarian, even when they go through deconfliction procedures. And I think the question for the White House is, we keep hearing these statements that they object to the way in which Israel is carrying out its military strategy. They object to the idea of Israel going into Rafah, which is the next step in that military strategy. If there are no substantive consequences for those actions, if the U.S. weapons and support just continues, accompanied by these statements, I just don't know that that's working and impacting the Israeli calculus here. So I do think there's some serious decisions ahead for the White House about whether to start to condition military assistance, on whether or not the Israeli government listens to what it's hearing from the United States and, frankly, from other countries around the world when they see things like this happening.
So, Josh, what do we know? And again, this is very early, but what do we know about what went wrong here? What are we hearing from Israel?
Well, Israel says that the investigation that they are now pursuing is what will get to the bottom of exactly what transpired here. But according to World Central Kitchen, Chris, they had a convoy of 3 vehicles that had just left a depot, a warehouse where it had loaded up food that had been brought into Gaza by that maritime route. And they say that not only did the roofs of these vehicles have the World Central Kitchen logo, which is consistent with the video that NBC has seen, but they also said, as Ben was referencing, the deconfliction measures, that they had been in direct touch with the Israeli government to coordinate with them the route that this convoy would take, precisely to avoid any kind of misunderstanding or miscalculation that could lead to an incident like this. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, as he was leaving the hospital earlier today after undergoing hernia surgery, appeared to take responsibility for this incident. He said in a statement, in part, unfortunately, this was a tragic incident of an unintended strike of our forces on innocent people in the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu went on to say, this happens in war. We are checking this thoroughly. We're in touch with the governments. We'll do everything to make sure this doesn't happen again. And as Israel tries to prevent this from happening again, the military announced today that they are going to set up a joint situation room alongside these aid organizations that are working in the Gaza Strip, so that essentially everyone is in one place and can coordinate these movements movements in the future. But that is raising some real questions nearly 6 months into this war. Why hasn't that been done already? Why were the deconfliction channels that were open with these aid groups not sufficient to prevent Israel from apparently striking a convoy of an aid group that has a lot of credibility in Israel? Because one of the things that Israel has pointed out is that World Central Kitchen not only did really good work in Gaza, they also did really good work, Chris, inside Israel in the immediate aftermath of the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. And so the fact that a group that had trust on both sides has been hit and now has to cease operations, at least temporarily, within Gaza is really raising some profound questions about how this is going to hamper future humanitarian efforts in the Gaza Strip, as a number of other aid organizations that are active on the ground in Gaza are also saying they're going to pause their operations because it's just not safe right now.
Yeah, and Ben, the prime minister saying that this is going to be checked thoroughly. I mean, can Israel be trusted to investigate what happened here? I mean, you have the CEO, again, of World Central Kitchen calling this a targeted attack. The Prime Minister of Australia lost a citizen, called the tragedy beyond any reasonable circumstances. You point out this is not normal. This was in a deconflicted area. We can all see how well marked. How does this happen? Are there serious questions, first of all, about whether Israel is going to get to the bottom of this? How do we get to the bottom of this?
Well, first of all, to build on something Josh said, a lot of aid groups have been saying this for months. They've been complaining about the lack of clear deconfliction procedures. You had the IRC was hit. Doctors Without Borders suffered a hit in one of its facilities, and now this. And part of the complaints are also that there's such difficulty just getting aid into the Gaza Strip that it would be a lot easier if you just kind of opened up the spigot of aid crossing the Rafah border crossing that has been sealed. And so it's very hard to get aid in, and it's very hard for these organizations to operate at a time when you have near famine conditions approaching in Gaza. The World Central Kitchen was going to be the delivery vehicle for this pier, this floating delivery system that President Biden announced in the State of the Union. If this is paused, it's not clear how that gets in. So this clearly has to be dealt with. And the easiest way is to just open up the floodgates for more assistance to get in. If not, the deconfliction has to be much clearer. And in terms of accountability, Chris, I don't think you can just rely entirely on what the Israeli government does here. And look, there are multiple foreign governments that have an interest here. There was an American citizen, there was an Australian citizen that were killed in this strike. The U.S. provides a lot of military assistance to Israel. That military assistance is conditioned on the government that receives it, abiding by, obviously, the rules and laws of war. So I think that the U.S. And other governments have a right to see the underlying information involved in any finding that is made about what happened here, because it's important both for accountability, but also to make sure that aid organizations can operate, because if they can't, an already catastrophic humanitarian situation will get a lot worse.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.